Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I thought I'd show you guys how I go about kind of making my own custom kind of rivers or like kind of streams. So in today's video what I'm going to do is I've designated a 16 by 16 block chunk slash area here, and I'm going to make a kind of river diorama and show you how I go about making my own custom rivers and stuff. So for this video I'm going to be using my texture pack, so if you want to have access to these sorts of cattail models, the lily pads, the mushrooms and things like that, then make sure to go down in the description and check out my Planet Minecraft link, which has a link to both my main resource pack and my add-on, so that you can have access to these really cool kind of textures to really change up and improve your builds. So without further ado, let's just get on with the video. So the first thing you want to do is to kind of plan out how you want your river to be looking. So what I tend to do is I use coarse dirt and my coarse dirt slabs here to kind of mark out how thick and how the kind of direction of the river. So I'm going to make the river go this way, and I want it to be somewhat straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make the side of, I'm going to dig out the kind of river here. So this is a subjective process, so obviously you make it look kind of however you want it to look. So it's something that, you know, there's no perfect way of doing it, just kind of make something that you like the look of. But you also want to try and make sure it looks somewhat natural. So here it's a little bit thin here for what I want, so what I might do is take that out, and yeah, I'm not sure about this, because what you might realise is I've kind of got, it's very clear what's going on here, so I want to kind of mix it up. So what I might do is add a grass block here, for example, just to kind of make it look a bit rougher, and maybe one here as well, and now it looks kind of more natural. The next thing to do would be to just dig out the next layer, because what we're going to do is, for now we're doing all the rough kind of digging out just to kind of see how this will look, and then what we'll do is we'll go in and add all the extra details, so things like slabs and all the other blocks that will kind of make it look a lot better. So next I'm going to add the slabs, and after this I'll be adding all the coarse dirt and stuff to kind of make it look more river-like, because obviously we don't want grass growing underneath the river, because that just doesn't really make any sense. So yeah, I'm just going to do this, and yeah. I hope you guys like this kind of tutorial style. It's very different to what I normally do. Obviously I don't normally do things live, so I'm just kind of trying out new things here. So what I like to do next is I first off change the rim of the river and any obvious grass blocks in the river to coarse dirt. Now later on we'll be replacing some of these coarse dirt blocks with grass blocks again. It's just right now I don't want the grass to be spreading down here while I'm still working on the riverbed, because that's just, you know, it's really quite annoying. I'm going to bring this in here because it's quite flat here, so I really want to kind of make it look a bit rougher. There we go, this is a bit better. Now obviously, as I said earlier, this is subjective, so there will be things you want to change, but that's all just part of the fun really. It's all about changing things as it's going along and making sure you like how it looks. So yeah, that's one of the great things about doing your own custom terrain, is the flexibility. So next I'm going to go about adding things like the mud, the podzol and gravel. And now these I'll add to the edges of the river, and later on I'll go and add the sides and stuff. But right now I want to focus on the riverbed. So gravel, because it's such a, you know, it's a very different texture to the others, you want to have it less frequent, but frequent enough so that it adds a bit of extra colour to the thing. So you might want to do it in groups, because that makes more sense realistically. And in cases like these, you might as well add blocks underneath as well. I wouldn't recommend it here because there's the coarse dirt on top, but certainly here it's cool to add the extra gravel. Or you could do something like this, which is kind of cool because it adds a little bit of, you know, different colours here, as opposed to having kind of a large block. So, you know, it's up to you really. So I'm just going to go in and add kind of more gravel here and here. And what I will do as well is, you don't want to do it as common, but I add a little bit of gravel on top as well, kind of on the side of the river itself. Now it's up to you whether or not you want to do that, but I like it personally, so I'm just going to do that a little bit there. Next I'll add the dirt. So the dirt in my resource pack is basically 2 of these coarse dirt slabs on top of each other. It's a weird cave noise. So it's 2 of these blocks on top of each other. So I just add these in. Now obviously these are very dark, so I don't particularly use a lot of these, but it can look great next to kind of coarse dirt and the mycelium as well. So I like to incorporate it. It's also good to use it in these sorts of areas where there's kind of, it would be kind of tucked away and slightly darker, so I think it fits there quite well. I'm trying to think where else I could add one. Maybe add one here. There we go. And one... I'm gonna break up the gravel there as well. Right, okay, so that's our riverbed basically done. Now, what I'll do next is we will fill in the water, and I just realised I got my water bucket here, but I don't have the bone meal. We're going to need bone meal for the seagrass, so what I'm going to do is I'll grab the water bucket, bone meal, I'll grab my cattails, the lily pads, and for now I think that'll be it, because we're just going to fill in this river. So all you need to do is, and I'm actually going to do this, just so it's clear where the edges are. Okay, so basically just fill it in one layer at a time, using a water bucket. Now obviously with 1.13 plus we can waterlog slabs now, so that's brilliant. So just fill it up. Now with these kinds of streams, I only really like to do them about 2 blocks deep. It depends on the thickness of the river. I mean obviously it doesn't really make a lot of sense in my mind to have a river that's really skinny and yet really deep. So I think kind of a river this size, this is kind of the perfect depth to have for this sort of size. I think that's the water pretty much done. Okay, now the next thing to do is to just spam grass. Now most people would just kind of spam this and leave it, but it's something that's you want to pay a lot more attention to, because in some places grass might not reach. So for example I might want grass there. Another thing as well is I try to avoid using the double high grass. Now feel free to use it like in places like that, but in places like this where it's just one strip down the middle, I would get rid of some of it at least. Oh, I missed a bit of water here, my bad. That's one thing, really annoying thing about slabs, is it sometimes places above. Anyway, yeah, so I just get rid of some of that grass so it doesn't look like there's too much, because obviously you've got all the grass around the other places, so you know there's a lot going on. So yeah, I add these extra bits up here. Next I go in and add the cattails. So these are generally in groups, so I like to add maybe a couple of larger groups of the cattails. So like there, there and there. And then I add a couple singular ones as well, like here, here. And I think that'll be about it for the cattails, because they are quite, you know, you don't want to oversaturate it because there's going to be lots of other things going on. Next up I like to add the lily pads. So I add these in areas which would be less busy in my mind in terms of flowing water, so I like to add them in the gaps and corners there. So you might want to add maybe one there and there, certainly a couple there. That's like the perfect place where you might want to have a lily pad. I'll do one there, and in the cattails as well, because that makes sense, because obviously these would be kind of blocking flowing water, so it makes sense for there to be more of them there. What I might do is, yeah, no, I'm going to keep that like that. I might change that later on, I'm not sure. Okay, so now we've basically got the base of the river here. Now I'm going to show you guys how I kind of detail the sides of my rivers to make them look really cool and to blend in, because you know you've got this awesome river here and you don't really want to just have it like it is, you know, you want to have the rest of it looking great as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I do the sides of my rivers. So the first thing to do would be to get your grass and to just kind of add more grass to the side of the river. Now it makes sense for there to be mud along the river, but I also like adding some grass blocks because it breaks up the kind of coarse dirt block that we've got here. So that's something that I like to do. So as you can see, it adds a bit more colour. And once all the grass is in here, like the grass blades and stuff, then it will look really good. I'm just going to quickly clear my inventory a bit because I've obviously got quite a bit in here that I don't particularly need right now. And I'll grab my these here as well. Okay, so next we'll outline kind of how we want the edges to look. So with this, it's kind of just a trial and error thing again, so you can just kind of do whatever you want. So I'm going to use that for an edge because I like that, because it's not uniform, it's quite random and kind of rugged, so I like that. I'll bring this in as well, like this, and you kind of want it to kind of partially conform with the the kind of shape of the river here, so as you can see it kind of does in a way, but that's again like that's up to you how you want to do that. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. Obviously you make it look how you want it to look. Okay, so the next thing to do would kind of be to fill up the terrain here. Now I'm going to bring these up high. I just like filling it below because I don't particularly like having empty air pockets beneath my terrain. Like obviously in a survival scenario where you've done like a massive mountain, then yeah, like you would leave a massive gap, but in cases like these, you know, there's no real reason not to fill in the gaps. Okay, so I'll do it on this side, and then we can get on to adding the extra vegetation and you know, things like that, and that will really bring together the build. Natural features are something I personally really enjoy making in Minecraft. I think it's something that not a lot of people do, but you know, it's something that can really make an area that you've built, you know, look 10 times better in terms of looks and just being more interesting. I don't really like this area. I haven't left myself a lot of room on this side, but obviously you guys will have a lot more room to play with, so it'll be a lot easier. But I'm just gonna have to work with this and kind of go with it. So the next thing to do, the next thing I do at least, is I bring in Coaster and Podzol, and I add that to the grass bits here. One thing I did forget to do was add kind of Podzol to the lake here. Now you can do that, you don't have to, because I know if you're using vanilla textures it might not contrast as well, but it's you know, it makes sense because the sides of rivers will be quite muddy, so it makes sense to have kind of Podzol and kind of mixed up leaves and stuff. So with the Coaster and the Coaster and the Podzol, I like to add kind of just small kind of clumps, so like maximum kind of a 4 block bits here, just to kind of add a bit of variation in the grass. Because straight grass looks good, but it's nice to kind of have a bit of breakup with different blocks. So I'll do that on this side as well. It particularly looks good in areas like this, where it's kind of like a corner, because it like makes the corners look a lot more attractive instead of being kind of just straight, kind of like that. It's hard to explain, but I think you guys will understand what I mean. Okay, so I think I just had a bit more Podzol there. And yeah, and you can have like 1 block specs as well. It kind of depends on what you're doing. Obviously if it's a more wooded area, then you want to add more Podzol, because obviously there wouldn't be as much grass because it's darker, but it's up to you really what you want to do. Next I'll add a mycelium with my mushrooms. This is something I like to do before I add all the extra vegetation, because it allows me to kind of plan later on what I want to do with my vegetation. So what I like to do is kind of just in darker areas have patches where I've got mushrooms. So like here, for example. I might also add one up here as well, although I want one that's... that one could work. I might change that later on. And another thing as well is mycelium is a really cool one to add to your river banks as well later on. Especially if you want to have any mushrooms along the river. You don't have to do that, but you know, it's something I like to do personally. So I'll just add all these in here. Put that in there. And I'll add one up here as well. I'll make that one brown and this one red, and that one brown. Okay, this looks good. I might change this later on, but I'm not sure. Again, it's all a very subjective process, so you kind of just do things as it comes. Another block I forgot to add over there was oak leaves, and I think I use acacia, but yeah, I'll just use acacia and oak. So what I like doing is adding kind of rough patches of bushes to kind of beef out the vegetation a bit. Now once all the grass is added and everything, it looks really good. Like, I love how the kind of bushes make the terrain look a lot better. So I'll just add these. Now it's really random, you know, I'll add it like this. Again, I'll probably remove some of these depending on how busy it looks. Next I'll add ferns. Now I like to add the ferns in kind of areas above Coaster near the bushes. So like here, here, there. I also like to add them on the kind of on the level with the riverbed as well, like there for example. I'll add them over here as well. Okay, now I'll add double high things like tall grass and large ferns. These I like to add in corners as well, so you might want to replace them for old ferns, for example, and like down here, for example. Okay, there we go. So we've got our ferns and stuff like that. Now we want to get our flowers. So with flowers, they tend to not be so random, they tend to be growing in clumps, in groups. So it's normal to have kind of a group of dandelions or a group of poppies, for example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a couple flowers that look great, but also it's up to you really. You might either want them to contrast or you might not want them to. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick ones that don't really contrast super well, but all look good together. So I'm going to pick out the dandelions, the poppies, and the azure bluets. So I think these will look really cool. And basically what I want to do is I just want to place these in kind of groups like that. So they're not completely next to each other, but they look, you know, they work together. So here we've got red, so I really want to add a bit of yellow, because that will really contrast quite well, contrast with those. And on this side, I'll add a bit of red to kind of, you know, I like, you know, it's all about personal taste. You know, there's only so much I can explain how to do this, because at the end of the day, you know, what looks good to you is what you'll do. So, yeah. And what I'll do here is I'll just add a couple there. Yeah, so I think that looks good. Now what we can do is we can add things like grass and also dead bushes as well. And I don't normally add dead bushes, but they might look good on the kind of riverbank. So like that, for example. There's a bit of improv on scene because I don't normally add the bushes, the dead bushes, but they look quite cool. Right, now what you can do is you can add your grass. So the trick here is to not add grass on everything, just add it in places where it makes sense. So I tend to not like to add it on areas that are quite coarse dirty. So like here, for example, I like leaving the coarse dirt exposed because I like to be able to see that texture. However, in other areas like here, for example, I like having the grass because it makes it look overgrown. So I'll just add all this in here and then we'll see how this side looks. Okay, this side's looking okay. I'm just trying to think. I feel like something's missing, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I think it's things like trees and stuff that really add extra things. But for right now, I just want to show you kind of a plain bank here, so that you guys can kind of get an idea of how to do that. Okay, so we'll just add in our grass here. Now I absolutely love Jeremsy Boy's grass textures here because the height variation and just the difference, it's just so much better. You know, with vanilla there is kind of a bit of variation in terms of how grass is moved either lower or higher, and that kind of makes them appear different, but at the end of the day, you know, it's the same texture, whereas by having it like this, it's just, you know, there's so much variation that you can achieve. Okay, well I might do in areas where it looks quite open, like here for example, I want to add kind of more ferns, for example, because those all kind of block out and kind of fill in space. Okay, I think in terms of details and everything, this is pretty much done. I can't think of anything else I can really add here to kind of make it look more natural without overdoing it, really. Like, you may say I've overdone it here. Well, that's up to you, you know. If you want to get rid of some of these features, like the flowers or the mushrooms, for example, that's totally down to you. But I just like adding I like having a lot going on. You know, there's, you know, while also achieving a level of realism. So I think in terms of this tutorial, it's pretty much done here. You know, we've got a nice riverbank, we've got a nice river edge or stream edge. We've got a nice kind of detailed river here with the grass and everything. So yeah, I think it looks good. What I'll do is I'll quickly put on my shaders real quick so you guys can see how it looks with shaders. And hopefully this looks really cool. Well, who am I kidding? With shaders, it will look cool. Oh, that's bright. Yeah, I like using the BSL shaders, but they are very bright. They kind of warm up over time. So what I might do is I'll set the time to day, and there we go. Boom. So as you can see here, we've got a nice kind of shader riverbed here. So yeah, anyway, I really hope you guys have enjoyed the video. I'm really happy with how this has turned out. I hope you guys have found this really interesting. You know, even if you don't want to use my resource pack, you can still pick up a lot from this in terms of technique and, you know, kind of features and stuff to include in your own rivers and stuff. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe, leave a like, comment down below, and check out my social media links in the description below. Anyway, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!